Welcome to the Space Dreamers podcast, a Sumadre production.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Liftoff and the clock has started.
Roger, 0J, and I feel fine. Roger, 0J, and I feel fine.
Welcome to the Space Dreamers. I'm your host, Jared Parisi. I have my co-host here, Amy. And for this episode, I'm going to be the commander, and Amy's going to be my XO.
What's an XO?
It's like second in command.
Nice, okay.
So the reason I say that is because for the past week, I've been binge watching Battlestar Galactica.
Nice.
Because I have it on Blu-ray. I think I got it for Christmas, like, back when I was in college.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like, I consider that one of my favorite shows of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never watched the last season.
Really?
Yeah. So it's like, it's 4 seasons, but the last season was broken up into 2 seasons.
Right,
It's
yeah.
like the same amount of episodes as 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
But it was 2 seasons. So, like, the final 10 episodes, I never watch.
Wow.
So it's crazy. So that every time I watch that show, I still don't know what's going on. I'm just like, wonder where all this is going. But like, I know the beginning so well.
Right.
So we're here to talk about Arthur C. Clarke, and one of the hallmarks of Arthur C. Clarke is hard science fiction, which, as you may know, people may know or don't know, is science fiction based on existing fact and or theory.
Okay.
So one thing, and like I knew this, but I didn't really know it until I started watching Battlestar Galactica again over the past week. So there's 4 seasons. I finished the first season. I'm like a little ways into the second season. So another way. So Battlestar Galactica is not hard science fiction.
No. Okay.
But it does things that sort of meet hard science fiction halfway through. Or meet them halfway.
Okay.
And I'll explain. So basically, do you know anything about Battlestar Galactica?
No, I really don't.
Do you know, like, can you even conjure an image from back when it was on TV?
I think all I can conjure is the image of the like logo, like the font.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Battlestar Galactica is, as I mentioned before, it certainly is military science fiction because they act like people on Earth who are in a military, except that they're in space. So this is actually really cool. Beyond the hard science fiction discussion, I think you would think this is awesome.
Okay.
Just the fucking setup.
Yeah.
I was gonna try not to swear on the show, but maybe I'm going to. Just the setup for BSG is so sick. You ready for this?
Okay.
Okay. So Battlestar Galactica takes place not near Earth. So there are humans, but they're not from Earth. When you look at it, you would think, oh, this is just in the future.
Right.
Like Star Trek is in the future.
Yes.
But everything came from Earth.
Okay.
So it's like, could be our future.
Right.
Battlestar Galactica does not take place on Earth or anywhere near Earth.
Okay.
Okay. But it opens by explaining that Cylons were made by man. Okay. And Cylons are like metal. They're like robots, like with AI. So they look like robots and they were created to help man in his everyday life, I guess.
Okay.
But the Cylons rebelled. This all happens before the show starts.
Okay.
The Cylons rebelled, and a war was sparked between man and Cylon. So basically, like humans are like Frankenstein,
Right.
and Cylons are their creation,
Yes.
getting angry at them for whatever reason. So there's a war, and then 40 years prior to when the show starts, they reach like an armistice, a truce,
Okay.
and the Cylons leave without a trace. And so every year, I'm pretty sure it's every year, there's a space station set up really far away from where the humans are from,
Yeah.
meant for a Cylon representative and a human representative to meet and just continue on this truce or whatever.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
But no Cylon ever shows up. So a human representative goes there on the same day every year.
Every year, and nobody shows
and
up.
it's always just empty. No one shows up. And another thing you have to understand is that you might be wondering, since I haven't said yet, where do these humans live?
Right.
They live on 12 planets revolving around one sun.
But not near our solar system.
No.
This is something totally different.
Totally different.
Ah.
So they call themselves the 12 colonies.
Mm-hmm.
So each planet is a colony, and each planet kind of has their own, like, they're all like a united human race, but they have kind of their own cultural things going on each planet.
Mm-hmm.
So the first episode is 3 hours long.
Oh, my word.
So it was a miniseries originally, and then I guess it got picked up to become a show, which is weird because when you watch the miniseries, it clearly leads into the show.
Right.
So I would assume they had that in mind. So no one ever shows up to this base, to this star, to this spaceship. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, it's the very first scene of the first episode.
Yeah.
The dude's sitting there. He's literally falling asleep. They're just putting a, like, it's just formality.
Yeah.
They show up, nothing ever happens. Dude falls asleep, and then all of a sudden the doors where the Cylon side open,
Yeah.
and these two metal things walk out. And their arm is like a gun, and then it turns into like a hand. And it's like decent CGI for 2004. And then this beautiful blonde woman walks through.
Oh.
She's wearing all red. And she walks up to the dude sitting there, and he's absolutely blown away, dude.
Yeah.
40 years. Okay. And the woman walks up, and she sits down right next to him. This woman is like, just exudes, I don't know how to, like, she's just very, she's beautiful, and just at the same time, she's like elegant and commanding.
Yeah.
Like, so she walks in, and she looks at him all weird, and she's like, "Are you alive?" And he's like, yes." And then she goes, "Prove it." And she kisses him. And then that spaceship blows up. The Cylon, and then kind of it's like a zoom out, and this is a massive Cylon ship above this little tiny meeting ship blows up. Okay, so the whole opening episode, which is basically like a 3-hour movie, is the 12 colonies getting surprise attacked by the Cylons, who have not spoken to humans, their creators, in the past 40 years,
right,
since they had a war which ended in a truce.
Right.
Okay. So the whole show is, the whole opening episode is basically humans escaping. Like, there's a moment where, like, the humans are like, "We have to go and fight," and then another human's like, "The war's over. Like, we lost. We need to leave now."
Yeah.
So you have 12 planets. They never say, like, the whole population of this race of humans. Mm-hmm. 12 planets of it's 50,000 survivors, all in a fleet of ships. Mm-hmm. But it has one ship capable of fighting, which is the Battlestar Galactica. So the Battlestar Galactica is basically like leading a convoy of civilian ships trying to find safety. Now, here is the kicker, dude. This is what makes the show so sick.
What?
Okay. At the very end of the 3-hour opening episode, the commander says, "Okay, so..." They talk about a 13th colony.
Oh.
Okay, and he goes, "We are going to find the 13th colony." Oh. Guess what the 13th colony is called?
Is it Earth?
It's Earth, baby.
Oh.
It is such a sick setup for a show.
That's awesome.
It's so fucking cool.
Oh, I like that.
Exactly. So this is, the way this all relates to hard science fiction is, so if, basically, you find out also through, like, their, like, origin stories, like their religion, is that all of humanity came from one planet called Kobol, and there was where humans lived alongside gods. Yeah, and then there was an exodus, and the 12 colonies went to one solar system, and the 13th colony, for whatever reason, said, "We're going over here somewhere else," and ended up on Earth. Yeah, so. Like, that's what's so cool about the shows, dude, is you're watching it, you're like, "Oh, it's all, like, futuristic. Like, this must take place so far in the future." It could take place in, like, 1500. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, they could show up and it could be present day. Right. So, okay, hard science fiction. So the fact that Earth people and these 12 colonies all came from the same source allows for you to see that these people are human. Yes. That they wouldn't look like aliens. You know what I mean? Right. Yeah. because they all evolved from the same place.
Yeah, they give you a good like reason why they're, human carbon based.
Exactly.
Why
they look, sound
exactly like us.
humans.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So not only that, so where the hard sci-fi comes in is they acknowledge that although most things look the same, not everything would be the same because you would have a different culture.
Yeah.
And everything that we just think is normal wouldn't be normal to someone in some far distant solar system. So for example, okay, so the best example, and really it's just an excuse to say fuck on television, is that they say frack. So they have they speak English, which, I mean, is an issue.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not. I don't know, because I haven't seen the end of the show. Who knows where they came from. Right. I do know that at the end, of the I'm pretty sure they find Earth at some point.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they say frack. They say mother fracker. They say frack you.
God.
It's amazing.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
And like the creator even said, he was like, they say it. Oh, and also Battlestar Galactica is based on a show from the 70s.
Yeah.
Which I never watched. I guess it's like kind of cheesy. But he goes, they said it a couple times in the show. He was like, but I just took it to the next level. I just wanted to be able to say fuck on sci-fi. So there's frack.
Uh-huh.
And it's goofy as hell, but when you're watching it and it's like an intense moment and they say it, it's like not funny. So, okay, so not only that, so any type of, like a piece of paper does not have corners. It has a flat edge.
Oh, weird, yeah.
Because it's like, why is paper like it is? Because someone a long time ago decided that this is the best way to have paper, 8 by 8.5 by 11.
But if you're doing it somewhere else,
exactly,
it might have come about a different way.
Right, it's the same concept, but it's like a different evolution.
Yeah.
So that's something you notice, and it doesn't matter, but it's important in my opinion.
Yeah.
Also, like, most of the main characters are in the military, and part of their uniform is like a tank top. Mm-hmm. But it like, instead of going straight down, it like curves in, like almost above the nipples.
Yeah.
So it's like, you look at it and you're like, nah, what? I've never seen a shirt like that. But it's like, oh, well, this is like some random star system humans.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And like,
if we all have like, if we all started from like the same origins,
right,
and so we have the same, like, brains, then, one would reason that things would be very similar,
right,
but definitely not the same.
Exactly. Yeah. Because
it's a different environment.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's a far cry from something like Star Wars.
Yeah.
Where it's like, there's just, you're just telling a story.
Exactly.
And like, you need people.
Right.
Because you can't, connect with characters or whatever. Like, you need to recognize what you're looking at.
Exactly.
But I think it achieves like a middle ground that just works so well. Not only that, another thing that I think is really important about science fiction is why I think it's one of the most important genres of any type of like medium is that it allows you to remove yourself from a situation and judge it not as someone involved. Because anything happening with humans, you're involved because you're a human.
Yeah. That makes sense.
The best example I give is District 9. District 9 is a metaphor for apartheid.
I love that movie.
Me too.
So much.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you say, okay, I got this movie and it's about apartheid, you know what apartheid is, probably.
Right.
So you have you already have opinions on it.
Exactly.
So if you say, no, it's about aliens.
Yeah.
Then you're like, well, who are these aliens? Like, do they deserve what shitty hand they've been dealt?
That's a really good point. You get to look at it in a completely different way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But okay, another thing I want to just tell you about Battlestar Galactica. Like all the sci-fi like actions, like there's like multiple layers of science fiction in this TV show. Like you have your standard like, okay, so another thing about BSG is that the humans only made metal looking Cylons.
Okay.
The woman that walks in is a Cylon. So they then created 12 models that are human, that look human, that are indecipherable.
Interesting.
And so through the entire show, dude, like I'm pretty sure by the end of the show you don't even know who all 12 are.
Oh.
But like the first one that you meet, that woman, she's number 6. That's her name, number 6.
Oh.
And the way that the Cylons are able to like surprise attack the humans in the first episode is she poses as a human and is on there's like a capital planet. It's called Caprica. She's on Caprica with this guy named Gaius Baltar, Dr. Gaius Baltar. And he's considered like the biggest, smartest genius in all 12 colonies. And he set up like the whole defense mainframe for all 12 colonies.
Yeah.
So she, being super hot and also cunning, is basically like getting in bed with this guy.
Oh, my Lord.
And accessing through him the defense mainframe.
Ah.
So she inserts like whatever virus or whatever it is
Yeah.
that allows the Cylons. So, and then she tells him. And so he is fucking Judas, dude. He allowed the entire human race to essentially be genocide, like completely wiped out
Yeah.
through his own horniness. And he's just a total prick. But dude, so then, but like she also kind of like falls in love with him.
What?
And this is the thing, dude. The Cylons like want to be human. That's like kind of one of the main conflicts of them, or at least I think they do.
I mean, it would kind of make sense because, you know, you the creation, you know, is creating their own creation in the image of their creator.
Right.
So then those creations are going to be curious
Yeah, I mean,
about their creator's creator that looks just like them.
right. And wouldn't you want to be God? I mean, God, if God was our creator,
Oh, yeah.
of course you'd want to be God.
Right.
He's all
yeah.
powerful.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, she's like in love with guys, and like there's one part where they see each other for the first time after a long time, and they're like kissing, like they're about like pulling each other's clothes off.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Did you miss me?" And he's like, "Can't you tell?" As he's like pulling her clothes off. She's like, "Do you love me, Gaius?" And he's like, "Did you really just ask me that?" Like that kind of thing. Like, he's a total dick. It's like, dude, you don't understand that. Like this woman is about to like. You want her on your side, dude. Like she's about to destroy the entire human race.
Yeah.
So then, dude, so she kind of like helps him. She like helps him escape the planet and get among the fleet. Not only that, everyone knows who he is. So it's the best part of the show, dude. And it's unclear whether she implanted a chip in his head or if he's crazy.
Oh.
She fucking shows up every episode, dude, next to him, talking to him, but only he can see her.
Oh.
It's
interesting.
so good, dude. It's
Oh
so
my
good.
gosh.
And so there's just so many scenes, and she fucks with him, dude. She grabs his, like, she's like being sexual with him and like in front of people, and they always play it for comedy, dude. They'll just cut to just him, and he's like being all like hot and bothered, dude, and everyone around, like the president
what
and like
is
the commander are just like, dude, are you okay?
Oh my
Because you're the
God.
smartest person in this fleet, and we need you to be okay.
Oh my gosh.
And she just messes with him, dude. And not only that, and it's a constant like cat and mouse of like he recognizes that he is Judas, right? He let in
Yeah.
this devastating force,
Right.
but at the same time, he's like a coward, and like. So he's really just trying to save his own ass.
Yeah.
And it's just like rewatching that show. Like if you've never seen that show, I didn't give away too much. I gave away a good amount. But like
Yeah.
you need to watch that show. It is so good. And I'm not just saying you, like anyone.
Yeah. I'm highly intrigued. I mean, based on any information that I had known prior to this conversation, it didn't really appeal to me, mostly I think because of that, you know, military aspect.
Yeah.
Although at the same time that doesn't even make sense because, you know, there are certain movies like Starship Troopers. I love that movie, and that's
Right.
heavily
Oh, yeah.
you know, about a military. But it sounds like there's so many layers to this.
Dude,
like
there's
so
so many
many
layers.
different things and so many you know, so much commentary on, you know, society and, you know, who we are.
Yeah. And I recently found out that it was also a commentary on 9/11. Because
Really?
yes, because it aired in 2004 originally, like the first season.
Right.
But they started developing it in 2002. So right after 9/11.
Right.
And it's kind of like they're essentially escaping like an attack on themselves.
That makes
so
sense.
like the Cylon attack you could equate to 9/11. And then of course comes the issue, like once the higher ups find out that Cylons can look human, it's like, dude, anyone in this fleet could be a Cylon.
Yeah.
So then it becomes, after 9/11, people, if you looked even remotely Middle Eastern,
certain way. Yeah, exactly.
it was like a witch hunt.
Right.
And there's plenty of episodes in the show where it's just a witch hunt, like people accusing each other of being the Cylons and stuff like that.
It's really interesting.
So the other, actually, I just remembered the other hard sci-fi thing that they do, or not the hard sci-fi, but how sci-fi allows you to remove yourself from a situation.
Yeah.
Like any show or something, or movie or book or whatever that's about Christianity, we all have thoughts on that, whether we believe it, whether we're Christians, whether we are atheists. We all have preconceived notions of Christianity.
Yes.
So in this show, there's a lot of talk about God. That's another thing, dude. The Cylons are obsessed with God. They like think God is like a real thing, and
interesting.
all the characters are like, dude, that's nonsense. But because it's like a fake world, like if I watch a show or a movie where a main character, where one character believes in God and the other one doesn't, like the one who doesn't says like, oh, that's just hocus pocus, like I might be inclined to agree.
Right.
But I don't know if this made up religion in this made up star system by these made up people is hocus pocus or not. So it allows you to be like, maybe the religious people are right. Because they have a leader in the show, I won't get into too many details, who they believe is like their prophet. They're like, this woman exactly mirrors our Savior in the old scriptures type thing.
Okay.
So to me, like if I watch a show where they're like, yeah, this guy's Jesus, I'd be like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, right.
But in this show, she could very well be a prophet.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's interesting.
It's really cool. Okay, one other thing about BSG. Dude, like, okay, we don't really need to, like, okay. There's an issue with female representation in all things. Including television, movies. Okay. The strongest and best characters in Battlestar Galactica from 16, 17 years ago are all women. And they're all so fucking amazing, dude. Starbuck is one of the greatest science fiction heroines, in my opinion, ever.
Interesting.
She is such a badass, and she doesn't take shit from anyone, dude. And she wins every fight she gets involved in.
Who is she in the show?
The actress?
No, I mean just like know her character.
She's
like
just and she's in the military, and she's the best pilot. So they have like they're called Vipers.
Yeah.
Which is like BSG is like this giant like thing with cannons on it. But then they send out Vipers, which are like little fighting spaceships, like one man little, looks like the thing in Star Wars, an X-Wing in Star Wars.
Yeah.
So she's like the best pilot. And like, and like the president is a woman, and she's just such a strong character. And a lot of the men in the show are like kind of fuck ups. There's one dude who holds everything all together, and that he's played by Edward James Olmos. You know who that is?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's so good, dude. He's so good in that show. Anyway, I'll stop talking about the show. But I think there's some key things in there.
Yeah.
About hard science fiction, and another element of science fiction that I think is super important, which is the ability to remove yourself from a situation in order to judge it from the outside.
Yeah.
So that it'll give you a different perspective.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever thought about it that way, but definitely it's like the perfect vehicle for something like that.
So that's what I've been consuming all week. What have you consumed this week? It doesn't have to be sci-fi. I'm just curious. Well, I do know one thing you consumed this week since last time I saw you that is very much science fiction.
What?
But tell me what else.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about Endgame.
Oh, yeah, that was on Sunday. That was a little crazy.
So Amy just went through all of the MCU movies, the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies.
I did.
She had seen a few of them before she started this thing. How many? Just guess, like, approximately how many you'd seen.
Iron Man, Thor, Black Panther, and the 2 Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay, so
and Marvel, Captain Marvel. I didn't realize till I watched it the second time that I'd already seen it.
okay, so she'd seen 6 of. I think there's 20. I think it's 20. But either way,
Sounds about right.
So like my other sister and I were telling Amy like now that there's Disney Plus and you could just watch them, like just go through them like a TV show. You know what I mean? Like you have the privilege now of not having to wait. Like it was 12 years.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine having to wait between them all.
Exactly. So Amy went through them all, and she just watched Endgame. So what did you think? I haven't talked to her about it. What did you think?
It was just completely wild.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a sneaking suspicion, even though I was. Well, can I say the things about? Like, can I give it away?
Yeah, dude. Everyone and their mother's seen that.
Oh, okay. So,
Spoiler alert.
So I was really upset at the end of Infinity War, like that. I come to find out, like everyone was, but I was like really upset about that. I did not like that at all, and so I had a sneaking suspicion that they were going to find a way to pull it off to bring everybody back. Although I kind of think it would have been better to make everyone leave everyone upset.
Yeah. But to Disney, that's money on the table for sequels.
Exactly. So that was definitely like what I was most consumed by was the dust situation.
The dust situation.
It was very, very upsetting.
The snap, we call it in pop culture.
The snap? What does that mean?
He snaps.
Oh.
He makes everyone disappear with a snap of his fingers.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, what did you think of Endgame? Or first, which do you think is a more enjoyable film watching experience? Infinity War or Endgame?
I think Infinity War.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Continue.
It's like Endgame was just you had to like wrap it all up.
Yeah.
Like the first part of it was all just like, like telling more story before you got to, what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think in some sense it was kind of like I'm not really that jazzed about it, to be honest. Like I was more, Infinity War was intense.
Yeah, and hilarious.
Very funny.
Endgame's kind of a downer.
Yeah, it really is.
Until they figure out the whole time travel thing.
Yeah.
It's funny, like when Captain America's like, that is America's ass. That's pretty funny.
Yes.
And like Hulk being all like sophisticated now.
Oh yeah.
When he has to like pretend to be the old Hulk and he's like smashing things. He's
yes,
like,
exactly.
He's like,
Yes.
Okay, well, I think it's a good thing to talk about on a science fiction podcast simply because I think Infinity War is super unique. It's just a really cool, bombastic blockbuster with all these characters that you grow to love. Mm-hmm. And then Endgame has the same plot of a million other movies and TV shows and books. You go back in time.
Right.
You see yourself doing what you did in the old movies.
Yeah.
And you change it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Very creative, Disney. F that movie. I remember I saw that movie when it came out in the theater. And I remember sitting there. I was so excited, dude, because I loved Infinity War. And as soon as they brought up, we're just going to go back in time and change it, I was like, what? I was like, are you serious? Like, it's just a time travel movie? That
must be why, now that like you're saying that must be why I was not as jazzed about it, is like not realizing that like what you just said is that you're totally right. It's just like every other time travel
it is
concept. The only thing I could say is that I did like the idea of distinguishing between what could be changed and what couldn't be changed, which was interesting. Like some of the characters that did die, and that was it. Like because they died while they were trying to figure it out or prior to it. Like I caught myself at one point being like, oh, what about Vision? And then I was like, oh no, he died before he snapped his fingers. So he's not coming back.
And that's what's so lame. I mean, it makes for like some like a comedy moment, but it's so lame when what's her name? what's the green woman's name?
Gamora?
Yeah, when Gamora comes back.
Oh.
It's like, dude, that was a big moment when you died, and now you're back.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And it's kind of funny because, like, you know, she doesn't know what's his name, Star-Lord.
Oh, yeah, that is really funny.
Yeah.
And she's like, this is the guy?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
But actually, I remember one moment. I haven't seen Endgame, I saw it in the theater. I'm just never compelled to watch that movie.
Yeah.
I do remember a really cool moment was when Thanos, something happens that makes him go, in the past, makes him go, wait a minute, this means I'm going to succeed. Do you remember that part?
Yeah, isn't it when he sees when he sees his own death?
I don't remember. I just remember
I'm
that
pretty sure
moment.
I'm pretty sure that's what it.
There's a moment when he realizes that he's going to succeed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's when it is, because Nebula, right, is the other sister. Right. Nebula, you know, spits out the footage of she's not with them when she's not with them when he succeeds, so she wouldn't have seen that, but she is with them when they kill him. Because remember, that's how Endgame starts.
Yes.
The whole movie starts with them successfully killing Thanos. So when he sees that he's then murdered,
right,
you know,
in that fashion,
he's like, oh, I did it.
Yeah,
like I totally did
That's
it.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, so that is
What do you think of Thanos?
I actually really like him.
He's awesome.
Yeah, there's just something about like I think maybe it's because of how well his character was like built up in you know, throughout the series. Like you actually get to know him. So like most villains, you just get like the tail end, or you know, you don't like you get like a backstory, but it's like really simple.
Yeah.
But his was a little bit more involved.
Yeah, and I think he lives up to his like legacy of just people talking about him in the previous movies. Mm-hmm. And he perfectly, in my opinion, toes the line of you agree with him to a certain extent, but you're also obviously agreeing with the heroes, because like it's like what you're going to do is like like who are you to decide?
Pretty much. Yeah, exactly.
Whereas the villain in Black Panther, it's like I agree with him, so but too much. You know what I mean? Oh, right. Yep. It's funny that we're talking about time travel movies, because I don't think I talked to you about this, and I can't remember if you've seen it, but have you seen Tenet? Not yet. Dude, let's do an episode about that. I'll watch it. Is it good? Or is it confusing? I was very confused. I think that it could have been a lot better in the storyline only, because visually, get out of here. Okay. Like, get out of here. Dude, you should have told. I could have watched it. We could have discussed it. It's pulled off like incredibly well, but it's very difficult to follow. Okay. Dude, I'm 100%. I want to see that movie. Yeah. I love Christopher Nolan's movies, so. Yeah. I mean, this, you know, it's funny because I think, I feel like it was like his movies, but not like his movies either. Okay. Yeah. If you had to rank Interstellar, Inception, Dunkirk, and Tenet, where would it be? As an overall film, it would be at the bottom. Okay. I mean, as you know, if you're going to talk about like, you know, technique and technical and like, you know, pulling off, you know, certain epic stuff, it would be up there. Okay. Yeah, but story and storyline, and it's I know I like the others better. Okay. What do you think about the Batman trilogy? Have you seen that? I know I'm a big Batman movie fan because I used to watch them, like, you know, Keaton and the what was 90s and 80s. Yeah. But I don't. So I know I've seen them, but I don't know. I don't remember them. What's the first one? Well, the first one is the villain is Scarecrow, played by Cillian Murphy. Oh yeah. Wait, who's Batman in that one? Christian Bale. That's right. Okay. But the second one is the one with Heath Ledger. Yeah, I definitely remember that one. Remember that one. I have a question though. I feel like we've gone, like, we started with, you know,
Battlestar Galactica,
Yeah.
which could exist in our universe, and now we're talking about these other things that absolutely do not exist in our universe. But can they be hard science fiction?
What?
Like the Marvel universe or Batman?
Well, Batman, yes, because Batman's a human.
Right.
Batman doesn't have superpowers. Marvel, no.
But aren't there humans in Marvel? And I mean, would time travel be considered hard science fiction?
It depends. No. Hard science fiction is, you don't take genres of sci-fi and say whether they're hard or not. You write in that genre in a hard science fiction fashion.
Okay.
Like that movie. I mean, like,
I'm just trying to figure out how we
Well,
got
that
from here
movie-
to there.
because I just want to talk about things you consumed in the past week.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I knew that one of them was Endgame, and that's science fiction.
That is science fiction.
Right. And then you brought up Tenet, which is,
Also science fiction.
I do 100% want to watch that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think what I'll do is I'll just order it from Amazon on Blu-ray, just
Yeah.
get like high quality because
Yeah.
you can't see it in the theater.
Yeah.
But what else? Anything else that's super dope that you watched or read
Nope.
in the past week? You guys aren't watching a show right now?
We are watching a show, but we're rewatching a show because we watched all the shows.
What do you rewatch? 6 Feet Under?
No.
The L Word?
No. The Mick.
Oh, with the girl from
It's Always
Always
Sunny.
Sunny, yeah.
Caitlin Olsen.
Okay.
Hysterical. I can't believe they canceled it after 2 seasons.
That's BS, man.
It's hysterical.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. I'm not really a TV guy,
Yeah.
but I love Always Sunny.
Yeah.
I think I feel like when it comes to TV, like there was a time period before streaming when I was in college, and people would have seasons on DVD.
Oh, yeah.
And like I had some friends who all lived together, and they had like every season.
That's so funny. Yeah.
So that's how I watched that show.
Yeah.
But anyway, so all right, you want to get into Arthur C. Clarke now?
Arthur C. Clarke.
Okay. What's up, Space Dreamers? Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It fills me with nothing but joy that you've made it this far. Before we move on, we're going to take a super quick break to thank our sponsors, and when we get back, we're going to dive right into this Arthur C. Clarke novel. Thank you.
Looking to get away? Tired of old polluted Earth? The Interplanetary Travel Agency has extended its holiday discounts. Set sail among the stars. Bask in the ice baths of Europa. See the geysers of Ganymede. Witness tornadoes on Titan. Now taking reservations for flybys of Halley's Comet in 2136 and 2212. Join us and witness wonders on worlds outside woeful Earth.
So as you may know, or you may not know, we are going through, I am reading every single Arthur C. Clarke book, starting with 1947's Prelude to Space, and I'm reading them in chronological order, and so far I have only read Prelude to Space. That's why this is the first episode. I don't know why I'm explaining this in such detail, but we're talking about Prelude to Space. It's a novel written by Arthur C. Clarke in 1947. And it's a novel about the moon landing, which had not happened yet. The whole novel just dives into the intricacies and the science, potential science behind how we would get to the moon. So you have to understand that this is 1947, 22 years prior to when human beings actually landed on the moon. So if you take a novel like The First Men in the Moon, written by H.G. Wells in the late 1800s or early 1900s, I can't quite remember, it's going to be way off, not anywhere near reality. But then you take a scientist like Arthur C. Clarke, who writes in the hard science fiction genre, writes a sci-fi novel, writes a novel about landing on the moon only 22 years prior to doing it, it's going to be more closer to reality. So in this episode, we're going to go through a few moments in the book and determine how close they are to reality, and just kind of like compare them to what people were really thinking about this endeavor when it was happening. So I guess to start, I'll do just a quick like a review, like was the book good or not? And I think that Prelude to Space by Arthur C. Clarke is a decent novel. I think to really enjoy it, you have to put yourself in a 1940s mindset of we hadn't been to the moon yet, and like any talk of going to the moon is interesting, but it's not reality. The most interesting thing about the book is that they don't ever go to the moon. The entire book takes place on Earth preparing to go to the moon, and it ends with the ship that they've been building to go to the moon taking off, but they don't ever go. So if you're interested in seeing how an author would write about a moon landing 22 years before going to the moon, that's really the only reason to read this book. It is almost completely devoid of conflict, which is an issue in most Arthur C. Clarke novels. He usually writes about like a near utopian society where like people aren't always in conflict with each other, which is like reality. It's a slight issue with Arthur C. Clarke, but once you get past that, you can enjoy his novels. So I guess, I mean, it's a novel with really interesting moments, but overall, don't start with it. If you're going to read Arthur C. Clarke, do not start with Prelude to Space. If you read a bunch of Arthur C. Clarke and you like it, seek out Prelude to Space as just an interesting beginning.
It sounds like it's maybe almost as like hard as it gets, because it's not even, it's weird because it's fiction. It was fiction. It is fiction, but then it kind of happened.
Yeah.
So it's like from our perspective, why would I want to read about something that happened, but it was written before it happened?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I wouldn't start there.
Yeah, so it's like it's almost more interesting to read the H.G. Wells book because it's really, really fantastical. I mean, sure, we've been to the moon, but it's way more fantasy, sci-fi.
Right.
Whereas this Arthur C. Clarke one's like, you know, it's more realistic.
Yeah.
And honestly, mundane.
Yeah.
That's a funny thing you just said. What do you think about the movie Gravity?
I barely remember it.
Okay.
It's all in space, though, right?
Yes.
Just like floating around space.
Pretty much.
Yes.
So I absolutely love that movie, but I just want to bring it up because it's just because I like talking about sci-fi. That movie, in my opinion, is not science fiction. Because even though
nothing not real or potentially real happens in it.
exactly,
right? Yeah,
it's not even. I wouldn't like. It's not hardly. It's like a disaster movie.
yeah,
You know.
yeah.
But I think like the general public would be like, oh, that's sci-fi. That's Sandra Bullock in space. But it's
but you're right. It's not.
It's really just like people in an almost realistic situation trying to get out of it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Like most disaster movies,
Right.
it's like not real, but
Yeah.
it's not science fiction.
Exactly.
So anyway,
That's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So where should we start? So basically, and I'll do a quick overview of what the novel's about. So it's about going to the moon, but it's told from the point of view of a guy named Dirk Alexson, and he is a historian. He has been basically assigned to be with the people building the ship and the people traveling to the moon in order to keep a historical record, because the people doing this thing and the world in general recognize it as this massive event in human history that needs to be properly recorded. So our main character, Dirk Alexson, that's the goofiest like name ever. He simply goes around all the different departments of this endeavor and gets to know them all. And he's basically just the vehicle for the author to let the reader get to know what's going on.
It's a great idea.
It's a very good literary device.
Very simple.
Super simple, yeah. And okay, it's funny. Okay, guess who the main character of the next book we're going to read is.
Same guy?
Not a historian, but guess who he is?
Who?
He's a science fiction author
Oh my God.
who, in the first, because I've only read the first chapter. I read it a long time ago, but I read the first chapter in preparation for next week's episode when we record. And it's like, it's a direct answer to Prelude to Space, because like there's a spaceship pilot. Yeah. And he's talking to the main character, the sci-fi author. He's like, you made us look really bad. He's like, I'm sorry. Like, he's like, I had never been to space when I was writing about it.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
It's like super meta.
That's great.
So anyway, okay, where should we start?
We start about the historian.
Yeah. So what we're doing right now is we're going to go through. Oh, actually, wait.
What?
I devised a little framing device for the podcast.
Yeah.
So what Amy and I are going to do is we're going to put our finger to the pulse of the novel, and we're going to find the BPM. But in this case, BPM stands for beauty, prophecy, and mindset.
Love it.
So I have a couple passages that are hallmark Arthur C. Clarke writing about just beautiful, profound, like
where his literary skill actually comes across. You can see it developing in this case because this is his first. Yeah.
So he just has this way of writing about profound scientific things in a poetic way.
Yeah. Hello, 2001 Space Odyssey.
It's astounding.
Yeah.
His ability to do this.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I like him so much. I love space and sci-fi and all that stuff, but it's his ability to be a good writer and also write about this geeky space stuff. I've never come across any sci-fi writer who does it like that.
Yeah.
So beauty is just a couple passages that I'm gonna have a voiceover artist most likely read. But we'll read it and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Prophecy is things that Clarke prophesized, and we're going to determine whether he got it right or not. We each did a little bit of research. Mindset is just looking at the mindset of basically like the world view, I guess, public mindset of these events at the time. And then like kind of what they were when he was writing it and what they were when it actually happened in 1969. So that's what we're going to do. And that might not make sense, but that's just how I framed it.
Yeah.
So let's, where should we start? You want to start with the historian?
I suppose it must be rather puzzling, continued Dirk, but it's quite logical. In the past, when history was made, there was seldom anyone around to record it properly. Nowadays, of course, we have newspapers and films, but it's surprising what important features get overlooked simply because everyone takes them for granted at the time. Well, the project you people are working on is one of the biggest in history, and if it comes off, it will change the future as perhaps no other single event has ever done. So Mind University decided that there should be a professional historian around to fill in the gaps that might be overlooked.
Well, the historian thing, I think, when we had talked about some of the stuff previously, we were wondering if that was just like a vehicle, purely the vehicle for the novel.
Right.
But if you think about it, historians have been around forever. Like, people have always been recording, our history as human beings.
Okay.
But what I did find out specifically, if we're comparing this fictional, compare it to the one that actually happened,
okay,
we're gonna, we were talking about if any of the same things were true, right? So NASA absolutely 100% has a historian.
Like all the time?
All the time from its inception.
Wow.
Because even before, because I didn't know where NASA came from. That was another thing we were talking about. So NASA came from NACA, N-A-C-A.
Okay.
And that was predominantly about flying, just regular flying.
Okay.
Aeronautics.
Right.
And that when NACA ended, NASA began. So it was a seamless transition.
Like
it was like the same people, same everything. It's like we ended the NACA and we started NASA.
Okay.
And so right from that very beginning, they realized the importance of making sure that they had people on staff who were part of everything that could record all the history.
Wow.
Yeah. And so they're even like NASA history archives, like everything. They've been very, very careful to record everything.
That's crazy.
It's totally cool.
And the motive was just because it's a momentous event.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
everything that was going on was a first.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's really neat.
That's crazy. Okay, so he got that right.
Definitely got that right.
One interesting thing, actually, and it's not science fiction, but if you love space, if you're listening to this, you probably love space, or you just know me and you're being nice. But one of the greatest documentaries ever made, in my opinion, is a movie called For All Mankind. And it was made in 1989. And it's not your typical documentary where there's like, a person sitting in a chair looking a little left of camera, perfectly lit, and his name appears at the bottom and he talks for like 2 seconds and the narrator kicks in. Mm-hmm. None of that shit. It is only footage from the Apollo missions with the people who went to the moon talking over the visuals.
Ooh.
It is gorgeous, dude.
Wow.
It's amazing. So you're watching it and you're like, first of all, it looks fake because you don't know what being in space looks like. Mm-hmm. It looks real weird. Mm-hmm. And when you're watching, you're like, how did they get all this footage? And I thought, America being America, thinking it's the greatest country in the world, it wanted to film everything to like shove it in the face of the Russians. But look what we're doing. Like we filmed everything. Like if you don't believe us, look at all this footage we have.
Right.
But no, the real reason they filmed everything, and you would think it would tie in because they wanted to preserve history. No, it was so that if something went wrong, they could look at the footage.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, that thing broke, so that's why the thing blew up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's actually what I found, too, because I looked up some stuff about, like, how things were recorded. And, because the initial moon landing was broadcast on television. It's considered one of, like, the most incredible moments of broadcasting.
Yeah.
If not the most incredible. And it was very interesting to me to find out that was just a bonus. Like they were going to do all that camera stuff regardless. Like what you said, it was so that, NASA could have eyes on the missions.
Right. And
it was really neat because I read about, how they took, like regular cameras that we had already developed, both still cameras and video cameras, film cameras. Oh, I guess they're both film. Now it's digital, but they were both film cameras, still and motion.
Okay, right.
And how they took things that we had already created and had to alter them for use in space, which was really cool. Yeah, and so it's like it was kind of interesting to me how certain things like television and film were actually like we made momentum in those fields.
Oh yeah.
Just because we were going to the moon and we wanted to record it.
Yep.
That's so cool to me.
Yeah. Not only that, I've also read about like multiple medical equipment.
Really?
That was developed specifically
Yep.
through NASA's attempt to be the first group of people to land on the moon.
Right. Yeah.
Like people who like poo-poo NASA or like they think that the moon landing isn't real. It's like even if it isn't real, like amazing things came out of that program.
Oh, 100%. I think if anything, that's something that I realized when I was doing like a lot of the reading that I did, is that, like what you're saying is that like a lot of things that were created simply for space exploration,
right?
They then converted or found applications here on Earth.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the best parts about it. It's some quote of like, you don't find the solution to a problem until you have a problem. So it's like you need a kick in the ass to figure out certain things that are like needed.
Right. That
You know
makes
what I mean?
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So it's like if some medical equipment would help humans on Earth, but you have to develop one really quick so you can get to the moon because you also need it on the spaceship.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's your
yeah.
momentum to get it
Exactly.
done. Yeah.
As I said, the novel ends with the spaceship destined for the moon taking off from Earth, but then it ends. So then the epilogue is 30 years later. The main character is in his 60s, and he's living on the moon. So basically, you find out that like it was successful.
Yeah.
And people are living on the moon now, and you find out that he's only able to live there. Or I'm sorry, he's only alive because he is there. Mm-hmm. Because he found out a few years prior to the epilogue that he has some kind of heart condition, and living on the moon with like less than 1/3 the gravity we have on Earth, it allows his heart to pump his blood more easily.
Yeah.
Because you're not fighting gravity.
Yeah.
So this dude would be dead if he was still living on Earth.
Yeah.
But because of this mission to the moon, he's able to stay alive.
And this is where we get into just purely wishful thinking.
Okay. Why? What do you got?
Well, because the moon is a very dangerous place,
Okay.
particularly the moon dust. It's made out of fine shards of silica.
Ooh.
So it got on everyone's stuff when they were walking around on the moon in real life. It ruined equipment, it scratched things.
Damn.
So they definitely had a hard time dealing with that.
Okay.
Also, just space in general is not good for the human body, which kind of makes sense because we were born and created and only exist because of this planet.
Right.
So we're symbiotic with the planet.
Right.
We don't belong in outer space. So, just little things like just the no gravity. I mean, that like all of our bodily functions, blood pumping through our body, it relies on gravity.
Right.
So when you take that away, it messes everything up.
Yeah.
It's
It's almost like on Earth, like if you hang upside down on Earth,
right.
like that completely, like you can't be like that for too long of a time.
Exactly.
Because all the blood rushes to your head.
Yes.
Because your head's supposed to be up top.
Yes. And I mean, like, there's just like there are like a lot of ocular problems. You just speaking of being upside down, like pressure, like different pressure on your eyes.
Weird.
Kidney stones are a big deal in space.
What?
Because of dehydration, because you're like all of your bodily fluids function differently when there's no gravity.
Okay.
So it's one of those things where obviously being on the moon would be better than free floating in space where there's zero gravity.
Right.
But it wouldn't actually help us in any way
Wow.
because there's just without what's going on in the environment we were created to be in, namely gravity.
Right.
Our bodies can't function properly. Obviously, most people know about, bone deterioration, muscle deterioration, things like that. But it actually, I found that it went like way deeper than that. It just really just messes with, everything
Weird.
in our bodies. So
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's also, we always forget about radiation.
Right.
Like there's so much radiation in space just floating around.
Right.
And the reason why we're protected on Earth is because of our little special
Atmosphere.
Earth bubble thingy.
Right.
It protects us. So it's funny because it's like the Earth it allows us to thrive, but it also protects us. Mm-hmm. And so you wouldn't get any of that protection if you were living on the moon. And
oh yeah, because there's no atmosphere.
Right, because there's no atmosphere, so you'd be subjected to all kinds of radiation. So no one's living on the moon.
We got to get Elon Musk on the phone and see if he wants to hire Amy as an advisor to living in space. I would assume Mars is different because I think Mars has an atmosphere, but it's like thin.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, obviously you'd run into, I really think that the takeaway is that, we would have to advance leaps and bounds to protect ourselves in space.
Right.
Because this is our home.
Yeah, it's almost like when you watch that like a commercial for a medicine and they're like, this cures this, but the side effects are like 15 items long.
Exactly.
Whereas it's like this guy living on the moon, it's like, okay, maybe your heart, and maybe it's a little easy on your heart, but like you'd be like melting.
That's it.
Yeah. You'd be like completely destroyed.
Something that I read that I thought was really interesting, specifically because this guy in the epilogue is supposed to be older, right? Like he's an older guy.
In his 60s.
Yeah. So one of the things that was interesting is that I read was like being in space is kind of compared to like old age, where you're more sedentary. So it's like, like we're in space without like gravity. You're like like your muscles deteriorate, your bones deteriorate. And that's exactly what happens in old age.
Yeah. Okay.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. So it's like, again, like there might be a couple perks,
right?
Like someone who isn't as agile on Earth could be more agile in space without gravity,
right?
But eventually it's all going to equal out and everything's going to melt away.
Yeah.
You're going to deteriorate.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think, and this even goes back to like hard science fiction, or at least a filmmaker just making the effort to acknowledge that these types of things exist.
Yes.
Is like in the film Ad Astra. He has to, the main character played by Brad Pitt has to go from Mars all the way to Neptune, which is a hell of a journey.
Yeah.
It takes a really long time.
Yeah.
And so what they do, there's just one little shot where he's preparing for that. And I think he does some kind of go to sleep thing that you see in so many sci-fi movies, like not cryo sleep, but like he takes a pill and makes him go to sleep.
Yeah.
And there's these little pads attached to his muscles, and they're like
keep them
flinching,
stimulated.
Yeah. So you see his bicep being moved around. Because if you're not moving for whatever 8 months to a year,
exactly,
your body's going to be destroyed.
Yeah.
I mean, not completely destroyed, but like it's like these acknowledgments in these movies that I appreciate.
Oh, absolutely. That's a really, really good point. Because I think in like in real life, I think it was the longest anyone's been in space has been a year.
Wow.
I think. And just talking about, if we were to go to Mars, it would take a lot longer to get there. So we really have a lot of advancements that we have to make in protecting our bodies to make these journeys.
Yeah.
It's something that when you're writing science fiction or watching science fiction or reading science fiction, that, it is appreciated that those things come into account.
Right.
Because it's like basic things that I think everybody understands about space is that it, would be that it's not good for us. So when something fictional talks about those things and acknowledges them, I think it's appreciated.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, probably even people like if you don't love science fiction, you're not going to be able to compartmentalize these things. But when you, I think you get a different sense when you're watching something like Ad Astra versus like whatever, like Lost in Space or Star Wars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's a different kind of movie.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's another part in the novel where a character explains that when the moon landing occurs, and this is in quotes,
before they leave the ship, they'll broadcast a description of everything they see, and the television camera will be set panning. So we should have some really good pictures. It's a full color system, by the way.
Was that a big deal in the 60s?
He totally got that right.
It was color?
It was, well, see, here's the thing. It was filmed in no, actually, it was filmed in color.
Okay.
We could probably have an entire discussion about like a whole separate thing. This is like a whole separate thing.
Okay.
Because it was really fascinating, all the camera stuff. But it was filmed in color. They had different cameras for different parts. Like, so there was the, I learned a lot about the moon landing that I really had no idea.
Okay.
Like, I thought we just shot a rocket to the moon and it landed on the moon. But we actually shot a rocket up into space. It went around the moon, and another little thing.
Yeah.
What do we call it?
Module.
Module. Another module went from that one circling down to the actual moon.
Right.
And I didn't realize. I thought it was like one thing. So they had cameras like everywhere on everything,
Right.
inside, outside, whatever. So the everything was color, except for the one camera that was on the outside that filmed Buzz Aldrin. See the first one?
Neil
Armstrong.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Jesus.
He's-
Totally messing this up.
That's okay.
Neil Armstrong, because there's the guy who's up in the circling around the moon
Yep.
that nobody remembers his name.
Yep.
And then the two people that landed on the moon were Buzz Aldrin, right? And Neil Armstrong?
Yes. And
Okay.
Neil Armstrong was the first. He's the one who said
Yes.
the famous line.
Exactly. So Neil Armstrong is the one that went out first,
Right.
and then Buzz Aldrin joined him. Okay.
Yep. And they hopped around and
Yeah. But the camera that caught him actually like coming out, it was on the outside of the module. That was in black and white, I believe.
okay.
But the other ones were in color.
Okay.
But the thing is that nobody had color TVs, so everyone
Right.
saw it in black and white anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
But I read some really interesting stuff about how, like, all the conversions that they had to do, like, because they only had like certain bandwidth that they
Right.
could use, like coming back from the spaceships to NASA, and like how they had to like convert it, and then like they had it on a screen, they had to like film the screen.
Really?
Yeah, like in order to broadcast it like the correct and they like correctly so that TVs in people's homes could see it, and it was just like really wild, like all of the technology that they had to like go through and figure out just so that we could all watch this like momentous, incredible thing.
Yeah. I love like when things like that happen in history, where it's like people just, I mean, I guess you could argue it was part of like the Cold War, but when people just do things that seem impossible,
Yeah.
just for the sake of like, this thing is amazing and everyone should see it.
Yes.
And like, not only should everyone see it, but we should do it.
Right.
So let's just figure out how to do it.
Yeah, it's totally crazy.
I feel like there's less things like that, and certainly less government funded things like that now.
Definitely. Because like this, I mean, this was a really big deal. They threw so much money
Yeah.
at this.
Yeah.
So much money. Like billions
Right.
of dollars.
Yeah. Actually, that's one thing Clarke mentions in the foreword,
Yeah.
which was written in the 60s prior to the moon landing, but very close to it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, he says in the foreword, that's one thing I got wrong, was how much this thing was going to cost.
Yeah.
He goes, I underestimated.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. Like, and it's funny too that everyone had black and white TVs, because like I recently, like, I saw a meme that was, so the PlayStation 5 and like the new consoles have come out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the current, like very, like, even though it's current, it's still like next gen technology.
Yeah.
And it was like it was like a screenshot of an advertisement that was like, the PlayStation 5 will broadcast in 8K HDR, this. And then it was a picture of a kid with his thumbs up. It's like me with my TV I bought in 2012. And he's just like has his thumbs up. It's like,
exactly.
cool.
You're totally right though. Yeah.
It's like you're at the forefront of technology, but like everyone who's experiencing it is like 10 years behind.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, okay. I have here in my notes, the ship Beta resembles, from the outside, a regular commercial airplane.
The two great ships now lay bare of all coverings and screens. For the first time, one could fully appreciate their size and proportions. Beta might, at a casual glance, have been taken for a conventional airline of fairly normal design. Dirk, who knew very little about aircraft, would not have given a second glance had he seen her taking off from his local field.
This is similar to real NASA space shuttles. They also resemble, as much as possible, a commercial airplane. Did NASA do this on purpose, and why? So, hold on.
We haven't even we have not sent a human to Mars. It's all been
No. Yeah. Robots.
Robots, yeah. Like I couldn't even imagine if we sent a person just did a flyby. Like I would be so excited.
Yeah, but can you imagine being that person in a spaceship for 3 years to not even land on anything?
Yeah, but
Dude,
to see Mars with your own eyes?
Yeah, but dude, well, yeah. But anyone who goes to Mars, dude, that's a one-way.
But but the thing that I don't think so.
Dude, it's also okay. You have to think about.
We got to get on that though.
We have to think about it in a monetary sense too. Like, imagine how much it costs to send a person there and then to bring them back. Like all the supplies you need to keep a human alive. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think they're signing up for a one-way trip.
Seriously, I can't even imagine that.
Well, okay, wait. So let me just get this one off the table.
What?
So we're talking about the main character sees. So the spaceship in this novel is made up of two parts. You have Beta and you have Alpha. Beta's job is simply to take off from Earth with Alpha on its back, and then Beta comes back down to Earth, and Alpha will remain in space for its entire existence. Because that's like the whole point, is that you don't want to have your spaceship take off from Earth. You want to have like a plane that can kind of reach that where the atmosphere ends and launch, like, so you can dock with Alpha, which is always just in orbit. The spaceship that goes to the moon never goes back to Earth. It just orbits Earth.
I gotcha.
So it goes like from Earth orbit to moon orbit, Earth
Right.
orbit, moon orbit. It never lands on Earth.
In the book.
In the book.
Yeah. Okay.
Beta's job is to take things from Earth up to Alpha.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time, it has to bring Alpha. So he explains that Beta looks a lot like an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you think about it, the NASA space shuttles, it's called a shuttle because its whole purpose is to bring things from Earth to space.
Mm-hmm.
So it's similar to Beta.
Yeah.
But in this case, I mean, obviously, I guess you could think of Alpha as the International Space Station in that it never comes back down,
Right.
although it doesn't go to the moon.
Yeah.
And Beta would be the space shuttle, but the space shuttle obviously goes to space.
Yeah.
So basically, what I'm saying here is that Arthur C. Clarke got it right in that spaceships do look like airplanes, or at least they did during the shuttle program.
Mm-hmm.
And this is because NASA at the time, when they created the space shuttles, they were trying to get people more comfortable with the idea of going to space,
Makes sense.
potentially as a commercial thing,
Yeah.
which the nail in the coffin of that idea is the Challenger,
Yeah.
which we don't have to
definitely.
get into that, but like that, the whole point of that was to say, hey, look, you don't have to be a scientist
Yeah,
or like
I
a
know.
super athlete to go to space.
Right.
You can be a school teacher,
Yep.
not with
Yeah.
in a space shuttle.
It was incredibly unfortunate. I mean, because the truth of the matter is that many, many, many people have died
Yeah.
in our space exploration. Many people have.
Yeah.
People that didn't even get to space. People before we even created space shuttles.
Right.
Just people trying to break the sound barrier and
Exactly.
stuff like that, like just regular pilots.
Yeah. And like the most famous one, I think, is Gus Grissom, who was one of the original Mercury 7, who died inside of an orbiter that they were testing for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And he ended up being locked inside while there was a fire.
Yeah. I read about that. That's
horrible,
It's
dude.
devastating.
I mean, they signed up for it, but it's just like,
Yeah.
man, it's like you're just putting your life in the hands of these scientists, engineers.
Yeah.
So the orbiter, I guess really what I want to say is that the design of the space shuttle is similar to an airplane because, I mean, it doesn't take much thought to realize that the thing lands like an airplane.
Right.
It's not like a rocket where it lands vertically. So basically, on NASA's website, it basically just says the orbiter is a high-tech glider. So its wings act essentially the same
Right.
as wings on a commercial airplane.
Yeah.
And it has a tail rudder for like left and right. And its wings have the things that go up and down, like I don't know what they're called. You know, when an airplane, like if you go up, you make them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Okay.
Exactly. Think of it. It's like when you get the window seat on the when you're on the wing and
Right.
you get to see them move up
Exactly.
and down, and
The orbiter has that. The space shuttle has that.
yeah.
So the space shuttle is basically just, it's basically a high-tech glider.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even bring itself to space. It has rockets attached to a fuel tank attached to itself that bring it to space.
So it's like Arthur C. Clarke knew that it wasn't just going to be one thing that left the Earth and did everything.
Right.
You know, it's always in stages where things, you know, it's like, you know, A to B to C to D. And just like how I said, like I didn't, like in my mind, I thought that it was just one shuttle that took off. You know, I mean, I understand about the fuel and the rockets that have to get the vehicle into space. But I thought that one thing, that one shuttle or whatever, went to the moon and landed, then got off the moon and came back. Like it didn't work that way. It was like it went out to orbit and then it went down to the moon. It's like everything in stages, which is pretty much what he's describing with the alpha and the beta.
Yeah.
You know, it's
so
a multi-piece.
Yeah, it's like he got the concept right, but he didn't necessarily get the execution right, like the order in which things would be
right
assembled and launched and all the things they have to do once they're up there.
Yeah.
There's another line in the novel where a character mentions a lady computer. So when I read that, I said, "What? Excuse me? What is a lady computer?"
When you told me about that, I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And the other thing that's interesting is that when you first told it to me, it was through a text, and you wrote it out as one full word, "lady computer," not lady computer, but lady computer.
Right. So in the novel, it's all one word.
Yeah.
But if you think about what it is, what it is the word separated. Because if you take the definition of a computer prior to what we think of as computers, what is a computer? It's one who computes.
Oh.
So it's just it's like a vintage need to say that it's male or female.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's like a female computer.
But not a physical computer, a human.
It's a human
who's doing the act of computing.
Who is doing the act of computing. And that's like what that... Did you see the film Hidden Figures?
I actually didn't see that, and I'm silly
It's
for
all right.
not seeing it. Well, I think the story is incredibly important, and I would love to check that out at some point.
So I have here... Okay, this is from the NASA website, and it's an article, When Computers Wore a Skirt. Langley's Computers, 1935 to 1970.
Oh.
Lady computer Barbara Barbie Canwright joined California's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in 1939. As the first female human computer, her job was to calculate anything from how many rockets were needed to make a plane airborne to what kind of rocket propellants were needed to propel a spacecraft. These calculations were done by hand with pencil and graph paper.
Oh, my Lord.
Often taking more than a week to complete and filling up 6 to 8 notebooks with data and formulas. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, her work, along with that of her mostly male teammates, took on a new meaning. The Army needed to lift a 14,000-pound bomber into the air. She was responsible for determining the thrust-to-weight ratio and comparing the performance of engines under various conditions. Given the amount of work, more computers were hired, including 3 women, Melba Ney, Virginia Prettyman, and Marcy Roberts. I'm sorry, that was from the History Channel website. Human Computers, the Women of NASA. And then I have another thing here. This is from the When Computers Wore a Skirt. Virginia Tucker first received notice of her appointment to Langley Memorial Aeronautic Laboratory while vacationing in California. A former high school teacher with a college degree in mathematics, she arrived the day after Labor Day 1935 to join 4 other women in Langley's first computer pool. Before the development of electronic computers, the term computer referred to people, not machines. It was a job title designating someone who performed mathematical equations and calculations by hand. Over the next 30 years, hundreds of women, most with degrees in math or other sciences would join those first 5 computers at Langley. Tucker herself helped recruit many of them, traveling to universities and women's colleges across the South. I don't know why the South. By 1946, as the overall supervisor of computing, Tucker presided over a vastly expanded department that had trained about 400 women and placed them in sections across the facility. So these women did all the grunt work, really.
That's so wild.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why the movie's called Hidden Figures.
Right.
That you don't hear about them in the history books.
So Lady Computer is quite literal.
Yeah, in an old-fashioned sense. Both finding the need to say lady
Right.
and also the definition of the word computer prior
That's
to
so
the
wild.
electronic version.
Right.
It's, yeah. So I don't know. When I read that, I guess when you read it, you just go, I don't know what that is. And then you just have to look it up. And it's not a simple definition.
Yeah, no.
You kind of have to understand what was going on at the time.
Yeah, and we also have to thank the English language for messing with us yet again, because a computer can be multiple things.
Right. Or we just take words and
Yeah.
like apply them to.
Yeah, keep reusing them for
Yeah.
different things, and yeah. Oh, characters discuss the idea that no one will remember the second, third, fourth, and so on moon landings. Only the
Yes.
first.
The first voyage will be the one that history will remember. After that, they'll all merge together. Now was the moment Professor Maxton decided to lose his temper. He could do with great skill and accuracy when the occasion demanded it. Listen to me, Vi, he stormed. What about the people who built the blasted ship? How do you think we like having to wait until the 10th or the 12th or the 100th crossing before we have our chance? And if you're such a damn fool as to want fame, then good God, man, have you forgotten? Someone's got to pilot the first ship to Mars.
And then also it has to do with one of the things on here was about religious objections.
Okay.
A second and perhaps more important body of opinion, while admitting that interplanetary travel was possible, opposed it on mystical or religious grounds. The theological opposition, as it was usually termed, believed that man would be disobeying some divine edict if he ventured away from his world. In the phrase of Interplanetary's earliest and most brilliant critic, the Oxford Don C.S. Lewis, astronomical distances were God's quarantine regulations. If man overcame them, he would be guilty of something not far removed from blasphemy.
And I feel like I actually found out things that were more interesting than that.
Other kinds of objections?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, like, one of the things, it was actually more civil rights.
Okay.
Like, there was a bigger, like, because, well, I don't know, like, I found out some really interesting stuff about how, like, all the astronauts were religious.
Yeah, they're all Catholic, right?
Yeah, and then,
Yeah.
talking about, like, Protestant?
Okay, I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not, and I could,
Not vanilla Christian.
no, correct.
Right. One of the
But I mean, I think it's not so much. I think what I found was not so much religious objection. It was more like the implications, like, to religion
Okay.
with space travel. The biggest objections came from a civil rights perspective, which is, we were talking about how unbelievably expensive all of this was.
Okay.
So there were a lot of issues, with why aren't we dealing with the problems we have here on Earth?
Right.
Why are we going to space when people are starving
Right.
here on our planet?
Right.
So I think that, I mean, the religious issues are, basically like, having to do with, like, us not being special if we go explore space and we find other beings,
Right.
then who are
created
we?
them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So there's a lot of, implications that way. But and I mean, actually, the other thing about religion is that there are some religions out there that rely, like, a lot of their origin stories have a great deal to do with space,
Okay.
So really, I think, you know, like I said, the more pressing issues were other things that were going on in the world. Because one of the biggest reasons why we abandoned, you know, further exploration is because interest was waning, because things like the Vietnam War were happening.
Right.
You know, riots in the streets and people dying and, you know, a terrible war. You know, it's like it was hard to get public attention focused on traveling to the moon again or even Mars when there were a lot of things that we hadn't quite dealt with here on Earth.
Yeah. And I think that's still an issue.
Definitely.
I watched,
Definitely.
like, yeah, some commentator was like, why are we going to Mars? There's nothing there.
Right.
There's nothing there.
Right.
This is where we live. We
Yeah.
should fix this
Yeah.
before we go to Mars.
Yeah.
Like, imagine how miserable living on Mars would be.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know. Dude, that's an interesting thing. This doesn't really have anything to do, I think, with the novel, but just about space travel and the implications. Did you ever watch that show on Netflix? I think it was like a National Geographic show originally called One Strange Rock.
Yeah, I think I've seen. Was it like had
It was
episodes?
8 episodes.
Yeah, I
And
don't know if I've seen the whole thing, but
Right.
I've definitely seen parts of them.
so each one was like a theme. Mm-hmm. But one of the things
Wait, who's it narrated by?
it's narrated by it's narrated by. It was created by the guy who directed that movie, like The Fountain and Noah and Requiem for Your Dream. But who's it? Oh, Will Smith.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember I loved the narration. He was really good. Yeah.
So there's one episode where they had an astronaut on it, and the whole thing was about how we need to take to the stars in order to save our species from the inevitable destruction of the Earth. And that comes in the form of us killing ourselves or a meteor. Like at any moment, a meteor could hit Earth and every human would die.
It's wild to think.
Okay, so it is the thought of, I mean, your initial thought is like, yeah, save humans. But this dude takes it another step further where it's like, we need to actively seek out a way so that if Earth is no longer livable, we need to live somewhere else. Okay. I have a problem with that.
What's your problem with that?
My problem with that is, like, really think about if you were born in a spaceship and you, under some kind of horrible conditions, you know, maybe livable, maybe we haven't found a planet yet, and all of humanity lives on a spaceship. And, like, think about how cheated you would feel. If you, like, what is the point of living if you have to live like that?
Yeah.
What is the point of saving the species if the whole reason the species exists no longer exists?
Yeah. Okay. You haven't seen Raised by Wolves?
No.
You have to watch that.
What's that?
Because that's exactly what that is. So basically is that we've destroyed Earth, or we're destroying it. It's like a big...
So this is sci-fi?
Oh, yeah.
I did not know. Okay, continue.
Oh, yeah. It's so good. We've destroyed Earth. We're destroying ourselves. Big, you know, like war. And actually, it's between atheists and believers.
Okay.
And you know, true to form, the believers have more money. So the believers create an ark.
Okay.
And the non-believers are left to perish on terrible Earth. So it's the same thing. The ark takes off, goes looking for a new place. Of course, there's like the rogue, you know, the rogue scientist who comes up with a way to get embryos off Earth and send them in a spacecraft to another planet that has been deemed, you know, most viable.
Okay.
Right? So on that spaceship are 2 AI.
Okay.
who are going to they've been altered to not only raise like children, but also like be the the womb, basically. So they're going to like create new life on another planet. But that's and it gets into like all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, you find out who these AI are and, their history and blah, blah, blah. It's like tons of whatever. But basically it's that same concept is that, they're trying to struggle and survive on this planet. It's, the AI, but the children are human. And so the AI teach them about the place that they left. That was, quite incredible.
Paradise.
Exactly. Compared to where they are now, where they're struggling to survive. And then it turns out that the Ark is involved and there are children living on the Ark. So it's like the same exact thing. These children were born on the Ark. They know nothing of the place that they came from. They only knew the spaceship and then now this strange planet.
Right.
And so it's kind of like the same. It's funny because that's not actually, even though it's like what it's about, it's not really what it's about. Like that's not like the plot,
right.
Because there's definitely more intense stuff going on. But that's like one of the layers of it.
Right.
That's really quite fascinating.
Yeah, I have to see that now.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. Is it a movie?
No, series.
Oh, when did it come out?
Recently, HBO Max, I think.
I had no idea. I'm unplugged. It's bad. I'm watching Blu-rays of TV shows from 2004. Literally, I have to get up and put a disc in when I get to the end of a disc.
I love it.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it premiered on HBO Max, September of this year.
Wow.
2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that totally. Basically, and the last thing I would say about it is, I don't think we have the right to decide what humans who can no longer live on Earth, like whether they should live or not.
Yeah.
It's impossible to ask future generations of ourselves, do you like living like this?
That's a good point.
You can't ask them that.
Right.
But if you really think about it, the only reason you would want to save the species of humans, like, why would you want to do that? Like, really, why?
Yeah, I don't know.
There's no reason to.
Yeah, it's kind of strange.
Like, if you come at it like the environmental angle of like, my I want an unpolluted planet for my great grandkids.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yes.
But like, and maybe my brain is just stuck on like, imagine living in space, dude. But like, it probably sucks. And it's like,
yeah,
and maybe those people in the future come to a point where they're like, why are we doing this? Because they wanted us to?
Yeah.
Because they, maybe destroyed their planet or their planet got destroyed.
Right.
The only way you could prepare for something like that, I think, is if it was a slow destruction.
Correct.
If like a meteor hit Earth, you're not going to send
Yeah.
people into space to go find a new home.
Yeah.
But that is actually a concept we'll get to eventually. There's an Arthur C. Clarke book called The Songs of Distant Earth.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. It's about like humans finding a new planet and how much it either sucks or doesn't suck.
Right.
To like know where you came from, but have to deal with where you are.
Yeah.
I remember that one being pretty good.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a theme that does pop up in a lot of science fiction, writing and film in general, and it's a good one. It's a good one to consider.
It's just like, who are you to decide what future generations want to struggle with just to live?
Yeah,
it's while I was watching that show, I remember just every time he said, we do not need to figure out a way to leave Earth. You just want to. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
What's up, Space Dreamers? It's the disembodied voice of your host, returning one more time to thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to this podcast. It means the universe to me. one more extremely quick yet high energy and worth your time break to thank our sponsors, and we will return promptly. Thank you again.
Eakin has a new shoe. Tired of zero-G parties where everyone has to wear those hideous grip shoes to stay on the floor? Eakin has developed the very first grip high heel. Dazzle your guests and shine brighter than the stars in one of 3 beautiful colors: space gray, black hole black, or supernova scarlet. With one simple buckle strap, you'll never leave the dance floor. Stay grounded. Buy grip shoes from Eakin.
What?
So one of the moon myths
Okay.
that I found out about was
What you
that in the 1820s, and I'm reading this from 7 Myths and Theories About the Moon from the History channel, history.com. In the 1820s, the Bavarian astronomer Franz von Palagruthensine.
I know that guy.
Yeah, there's a moon crater named after him.
I'm just kidding. I don't know what that is.
Oh, you don't? Oh, no, but there's a moon crater
Okay.
named after him. Anyway,
Gotcha.
he claimed to have glimpsed entire cities on the moon with his telescope. This is 1820s.
Damn.
He wrote that the Lunarians who lived there had sophisticated buildings, roads, and forts. Most of his colleagues scoffed at his assertion, but he eventually got a small lunar crater named after him.
Wow.
Yeah, so, I mean, that obviously... And it's funny because I saw pictures accompanied this online when I looked further into that gentleman, who was not only an astronomer, but he was also a physician, which I find interesting that you can be an astronomer and a physician.
It was the 1800s, man.
I know you could just do all kinds
If
of
you
things.
owned a telescope, I'm sure you were...
Well, that's really what it was. But anyway, they showed pictures of the things that he was looking at, like kind of looking back at the things that he had pointed out, and now that we could see them clearer, and it from different angles, I'm not gonna lie, it does look like there might be cities up there, ruins, or something. But that was really funny. So it's I think at some point we were throwing that around,
Right.
but I think by the time we got to actually really serious space travel in the 50s when everything started, 50s and 60s when everything started, I'm pretty sure that had fallen by the wayside.
Right.
There was also so again in around the same time period, there was another gentleman, Sir William Herschel, who was a prominent astronomer and composer of symphonies.
Wow.
So you could be an astronomer and a composer of symphonies. He also thought aliens lived on the moon and made regular observations about the progress of their construction projects.
Wow.
Yeah. But most people...
That dude's just living in fantasy land.
Exactly.
It's like they've built a skyscraper.
Exactly.
Are you sure?
Yeah, so it's I think you can see where it came from. I mean, obviously the farther back we thought those things, and then H.G. Wells wrote highly fictionalized right science fiction.
Yeah.
That was very sensational, probably about these lunar cities and the Lunarians.
Right.
But I think by the time we were really facing landing on the moon, we'd kind of come to figure out.
Yeah, and we probably had way better telescopes.
Exactly.
Where you could zoom in and see that is a completely dead world.
Yes, definitely.
There's nothing living on that.
Yes.
And it's funny, too, because much later, I think, far beyond when we solidified no life on the moon, people still thought there was life on Mars. And that's because apparently with a telescope from Earth, you can see what looks like water canals.
Yeah.
Which is, we know now that there's no water. But
yeah. So I think it's one of those things where it just shows that we desperately want to find something out there. And then as things progress, it's maybe there's life on this planet. Maybe there's life over here. And then as we learn more and more and more, we come to realize that no, we are we are alone.
Yeah, at least in our corner.
Yeah.
Okay, so the one more that I want to get to is in the foreword of Prelude to Space. So Clarke wrote the foreword in 1964, so 5 years prior to landing on the moon in reality.
But we were well on our way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
We
yeah,
still
because
didn't know if it was going to happen, but we were well on our way.
I think
when he wrote
in
the foreword.
1963. No, that's when he died. 1961.
Yes.
JFK
Yep.
made my favorite presidential speech ever, where he goes, "We will go to the moon and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard." But
That's amazing.
he said by the end of the decade we
Yes.
would land on the moon, and we did.
And we did,
in
yeah.
1969.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about, in the epilogue, he says, where is it?
Epilogue or forward?
I'm sorry, forward.
Okay.
In the forward,
In the forward.
this is Clarke's words.
Just before his death, President John F. Kennedy called for cooperation between the U.S. and the USSR in the exploration of space, and whatever may happen in the short run. In the long run, such cooperation is inevitable. Indeed, in the literal sense of my prophecy, has already been fulfilled, for the nations involved in this so-called space race have already declared that they will make no territorial claims on celestial bodies.
So basically I wanted to find out if that was true, which, I mean, it's forward. It's supposed to be real, but I'm curious about this in general.
Yeah.
Because the United States did plant an American flag on the moon.
Yeah, you're
after
right.
claiming that we wouldn't. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we came to a treaty. So it says right here, exactly 49 years. Well, this is written some other. Okay. On January 27th, 1967, the Outer Space Treaty, already adopted by the UN's General Assembly, opened for signature. In the midst of the Cold War, the treaty provided a hopeful moment of international agreement, especially because the U.S. and Russia were among the more than 60 countries to sign it on the first day. The treaty declared that the moon and other, quote, celestial bodies were, quote, the province of all mankind and can only be used for peaceful purposes. I love that. I love the idea of that. I think that's a very Clarke idea, that everyone's just like peaceful in space.
Yeah.
And there is, in fact, the U.S., when we went to the moon, we put a plaque on the moon, and it says,
Oh, yeah. What does it say?
"We came in peace for all mankind."
Yeah. Yeah.
So even though they're representing the United States, they obviously went to a length to say "for all mankind,"
Right.
which I dig. The treaty also keeps weapons of mass destruction out of orbit, bans military activity in space, and asks that states inform the public and scientific community, quote, of the nature, conduct, location, and results of any outer space activities. So it's like any scientific thing you discover up there, you like need to share it.
Have you seen Mars on Netflix?
No.
So it's a really cool show that kind of talks about, like, it's simultaneously fictional but then also real. So they do like a storyline that's fictional,
Right.
and then they do real interviews with real scientists and astronauts and all that fun stuff, right? So one of the interesting things that I definitely took away from that show is that a lot of problems start to happen when we find resources in space.
Yeah.
So I think everything might be fine and dandy now,
Right.
where we're all like, happily, agreeing on things and sharing the space station and, all that fun stuff. But I think that as soon as space exploration becomes monetized, like once we find something that's worth something,
Yeah.
then we're going to have a lot of problems.
Well, that's what's funny. It's like people who don't think the moon landing happened, they're like, well, why'd we go one time? Like, why'd we only go and we never went back? It's like, well, because there's nothing on the moon.
Exactly.
It's like, and so that speaks to what you're saying, which is like, if I took a stone, like, you and I would agree that, like, the stone, you could do whatever you want with that stone. It's just a stone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if it was worth $1 million,
Right.
I'd probably be like, can I have that stone, please?
Yeah.
Because I want that.
Yeah.
So it's like the governments of the world are going to be like, yeah, do whatever the fuck you want on the moon.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
It's just a ball of
Yeah.
rock.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas there are people that still think that there are valuable elements out there on Mars.
Yeah.
You know, and so like if we do get to the point where we get there and we explore and, you know, at first everything's peaceful and we're all working together because we want to find out more about the planets in our universe and, you know, hey, maybe it's a place for all of society to go and hang out when something happens to our world. But as soon as someone finds something of value that can make them money, all bets are off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
So we're even still... Clarke's, I guess, prophecy is like still unrealized because we don't know what's going to happen when somebody finds like a gold mine up there.
Yeah, exactly.
I think this episode was a lot less about the book, about the novel itself, than about the real life moon landing and real life NASA and real life space exploration.
Agreed.
It was less about the novel simply because as the person who read it, I don't have that much to say about it.
That makes sense.
Because it's a little bit dry. It's certainly interesting to read, but as far as like entertainment value, it's not way up there. And I just, like usually when I finish a novel, especially a sci-fi novel, like I want to talk to somebody about it. I want to be like, dude, there was all these concepts and it was so cool.
Right.
And like, can you imagine this? Like put yourself in this situation. And the whole point of this novel is that it's about a future situation that to us now is the past.
Right.
And there's even less to talk about because the person who wrote it was a scientist and was basically dead on.
Yeah.
For most of it.
Yeah. I think it's a great place to start, though.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because, you know, like how can you talk about science fiction if you don't know about real science and real space?
Yeah.
You know? So it's a really good jumping off point.
Yeah, and I think my BPM, finding the BPM of the novel is probably not going to be useful for every Clarke book. Like it probably won't dictate our conversations in the future.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just, I might bring it back for another one.
Yeah.
I mean, the next novel is about going to Mars, which we're kind of in the middle of doing right now.
Yeah.
As a race.
Right.
But we're not there yet. So most of what Clarke has to say in that novel is still
to be
sci-fi.
Determined.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Still to be determined.
Yeah.
So I guess that's it. Stick around for the next episode. We will be discussing the novel The Sands of Mars, which came out in the early 50s. And it's about a science fiction writer who is given the opportunity to go to Mars.
Can't wait to hear about it.
I'm sure it'll be good.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's it.
That is certainly not it. Your host lied to you. So I just want to thank my gracious co-host, Amy, for joining me and listening to my mad ravings about Battlestar Galactica in today's episode. I have to give a huge shout out to Kevin Lesage for going above and beyond in creating all of the music you hear in this episode. Thank you to my sister Heather for performing my ads, and last but not least, Quinlan Orleans Akins for reading all the passages you hear from the novel Prelude to Space in this episode. He is amazing. He's a great performer. Leave a 5-star review if you feel like it, and please join me next time for the next episode where we will be discussing Arthur C. Clarke's second novel, The Sands of Mars. Before I leave you, though, I'm going to play one more passage that is utterly beautiful and a prime example of the talent Arthur C. Clarke possesses in writing about poetically profound concepts. Again, thank you for joining, and enjoy this little excerpt. Bye-bye.
Almost lost in the faint afterglow of the sunset, the 2-day-old sickle of the new moon was sliding down into the west. Clasped in its arms was the dimly luminous disk which still awaited the advent of the day. Dirk tried to picture the great mountains and the wrinkled plains still waiting for the sun to rise upon them, yet already ablaze with the cold light of the almost full earth. Millions upon millions of times the earth had waxed and waned above that silent land, and only shadows had ever moved upon its face. Since the dawn of terrestrial life, perhaps a dozen craters had crumbled and decayed, But it had known no other change than this. And now at last, after all these ages, its loneliness was coming to an end.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of The Space Dreamers, a Sue Madre production. See you next time.